afternoon. Hi everyone, was lunch good? Are we all still awake? Good, because our next guest is someone that we're very delighted to have here with us. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Sam Adams. Sam Adams is the former mayor of Portland, Oregon. As mayor and member of the city council, mayoral chief of staff, and nonprofit leader, Sam has played a pivotal role in making Portland, Oregon one of the most livable and sustainable cities in the United States. As mayor, Sam ensured that sustainability was integrated across all city-level decisions by combining the Sustainability Office and City Planning Agency. He also led a coalition of government, business, and labor leaders, along with neighborhood and environmental advocates, to create Portland's Climate Action Plan and We Build Green Cities job creation and economic development strategy. According to the Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, the city's emissions were cut by 11% between 1990 and 2013, alongside significant population and economic growth. As director of WRI's U.S. Climate Initiative, Sam leads WRI's efforts to analyze and develop new policies, build political will, and support coalitions that will encourage the U.S.'s transition to a strong, low-carbon economy. Prior to joining WRI, Sam was the executive director of the City Club of Portland. Sam grew up in Newport, Oregon, and holds a BA in political science from the University of Oregon. Today, Sam will present Sustainable Cities Changing the Agenda. Please help me welcome Sam Adams.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. How do I switch the slides? All right, good afternoon. Again, thank you for that introduction. I want to really congratulate my colleagues at WRI-India for a fantastic gathering. Yesterday's gathering with entrepreneurs and with regulators and mobility entrepreneurs was fantastic, and the presentations and discussion this morning I find to be both very challenging and inspirational. I've been asked to talk about Portland's experience as it relates to planning and strategic planning, and what I did as mayor to build on the successes of Portland's efforts around land use planning and around the integration of land use and transportation planning. And as mayor, wanting to build on that to address some long-standing issues beyond transportation and beyond land use planning, to really stretch the city, to move the city to go beyond that and come up with more holistic definition of success and a way forward to achieve that more holistic, successful vision for the city. So I'm going to walk through that today, and then we have time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to talk about the Portland Plan, and you can read in lots of detail at pdxplan.com on the City of Portland's website. And it is strategic planning. and as opposed to strictly planning for based on land use or transportation. But it builds on that. Portland, as we heard in that kind introduction, has had a lot of success long before I was mayor in terms of acting on its values of wanting to protect the environment, wanting to protect farm and forest land, and to reduce its impacts on air quality. It has a long tradition of that, starting in the 1970s when very strict land use laws, really led by Portlanders but passed by the state legislature, were enacted. And part of those strict land use laws was to also create an urban growth boundary around regions throughout the state that really limited the amount of sprawl that a city could grow by, really seeking to push back on what was then the devastating effects of automobile sort of induced flight of families and citizens outside the cities. There was a lot of success around that. Portland, when I took office as mayor, Portland is the #1 city in the United States in terms of the percentage of trips that are taken on bikes. It's often considered the city that is one of the most walkable cities. Portlanders drive 20% less than the average of large U.S. American cities. So there's a solid base there for Portland to build upon, but I felt that Portland it was time to evolve, it was time to take it to the next level, and that we had become complacent, and that the success that we were having in terms of land use and planning and urban sustainability and urban revitalization had to evolve because of the problems that we were facing. For example, our economy was strategically weak in many ways. Our wages were lower than the average wages of major cities on the U.S. West Coast. The working poor made up 23% of Multnomah County households, which in the United States was far too high. And the city faced, and still to a degree faces, this distinction between high wage income earners. It's true for the United States. It's also has been true in Portland, the wage gap. And there's also deep inequities in the city based on East Portland, not nearly as affluent as Western Portland, and Portlanders of color not sharing equitably in Portland's good life. When I ran for mayor, because I'm a nerd and had been on the city council and had been chief of staff to a mayor and had really liked to get into the numbers, I talked about wanting to run for mayor, among other things, to focus on the next new Portland. And part of that was to address what was a really terrible high school dropout rate. That 8th grade, there are 12 grades, and at the 8th grade, about 4 in 10 8th graders dropped out of high school, did not go on to graduate. And the reaction I got more than any other was disbelief. And I knew then that while many Portlanders enjoyed the good life of Portland, a lot of the Portlanders were being left out, and that the city as a whole didn't know itself as well as it could or should have. We also have issues of health. If you look at Portland, it's one of the healthiest cities in the United States, but it really is two big distinct groups. You've got a very healthy group of Portlanders, and you have a very unhealthy group of Portlanders, and the healthy group sort of balances it out. But again, there are sort of these two Portlanders that I wanted to address. So these are some of the on-the-ground substantive challenges that we faced as compared to other cities, a generally successful city in the United States. The deeper sort of strategic reasons why we had success in some areas but continuing lack of success in others really, I believe, came down to a lack of holistic sort of understanding of where we were at, a holistic way of acting on that knowledge baseline. And that, as good a job as we did in terms of crunching the numbers around land use and transportation and the integration of that, that outside of that, the governing in Portland, the governing for planning, the governing for budgets, and even our actions were far too much based on anecdotal evidence as opposed to analysis. Or they were based on siloed evidence that only looked at one aspect of the city. In Portland, like there are other cities around the world, let's take transportation. There's the city's transportation bureau, city's transportation department, and then there are 6 other providers of transportation in the city as well. You have the federal government that has highways. You have state government that have freeways and highways. You've got the transit system that is separate from government. You've got the streetcar system that is a nonprofit. And all of these layers of government add up to about 30 layers of government that work in the boundaries that is the city of Portland, which is about 146 square miles. And we added up the budgets of all those government agencies, independent government entities in the city of Portland, and depending on how you counted it, it came up to as large as $11 billion a year. City government was about $3 billion of that $11 billion. And so the fact that we were far too siloed, which is always a challenge within a city government, but between all these different layers of government spending up to $11 billion, we're even more off on sort of our own set of assumptions, even though they were all working in this city. And even though city government just had 3 million of the 11 million, part of what this strategic plan is, I'll go on to explain in greater detail as we move along, we sought to get all of that aligned much better around some specific goals for moving the city forward. Yes, taking care of the problems, but part about this strategic plan was also to try to eliminate the problems before they start. So you've got the first 2 bullets, governing based, far too much on anecdote or as analysis. You've got siloed and fragmented planning, budgets, and actions, both internally within the city government and externally with all these other layers of governments. You've also got the reality that city actions, any level of government actions, are going to be incremental. That is the way it happens. It's rare that you get an opportunity to have a revolution and to completely change things in sort of one act of your city council or your state government. And so this incremental nature of government, lacking that big picture framework, often meant we couldn't judge each of the individual actions based on their merit of moving the city forward, and especially based on what other options out there might exist. We had uneven accountability measures. We didn't have a definition of the kind of city, a holistic definition of the kind of city that we wanted to be. And the natural churn of leadership in government, the natural churn of staff in government meant, in our case, that when there was a change in the mayor's office or on the city council, or there was a change in the state legislature, in the governor, that the work of that person sort of went away with them, that there wasn't this good handoff of strategy between all this constant natural churn of leadership. And finally, the last bullet, the reason why pursued strategic planning differently than we had done before is that our work became over the years less attuned to the actual needs of people and sort of more attuned to sort of, what's the right word, like transportation didn't really have measurements for the success as it relates to the success of people that it was trying to help. When the past transportation master plans for the city were put together, for example, there was inadequate involvement of local schools or nursing homes, that these silos had really calcified in some ways, and that we needed to get back to a measurement of our work and our sort of North Star for our work on how can we benefit the most people with the resources that we have. So this was a different kind of plan than we had done before. Again, building on our success of our land use and transportation plans, our urban sustainability, our urban renewal efforts, but really this time our focus was on a strategic plan for people. And it was built on partnerships to try to get some alignment of that $11 billion of upwards of over 25 independent governments was no small task. But it actually was easier than I thought, because they too sort of had concerns in the back of their mind about, when I'm working in Portland, I'm the transit agency and I'm working in Portland, what is it that I am ultimately trying to help Portland become with my daily decision making? And so what I found was there was a lot more interest to get that baseline, for them to get that baseline of knowledge when they were working in Portland, and really wanting to partner with us, not just on the planning, but the budgeting and the execution, because they wanted success just as much as we wanted success on behalf of serving our people. There are close to 30 departments in the city, and again, these are the partners that we partnered with, the other government agencies. We also had the private sector as part of our outreach efforts, which I'll talk about in a minute. We had them as part of the oversight, academia, NGOs. They were all part of this effort. The first thing we did is, working with partners and the public, is to put together the predicate, to put together the facts that we knew about ourselves. For example, the fact I mentioned earlier that 4 out of 10 8th graders drop out of school not graduating from high school, we dug into that and really sought to understand that issue, and really sought to make sure that folks, our partners, understood that issue as well. So that the transit agency, for example, when it saw the opportunity to do something that could help students graduate from high school, they had the knowledge that that was important, and they had some idea about what the nature of that problem, what the dimensions and contours of that problem was. So this wasn't necessarily about dictating to all of our partners what they needed to do to, let's say, help improve educational attainment. It was empowering them with the knowledge and letting them figure out how they could make their best contribution. 20,000 people participated in this process. Most of them participated in our outreach efforts, and we mailed. And we sent mailers in different languages. We met people where they gathered for gatherings around faith, nonprofits, athletic and sports league. We did everything we could in different languages. We did everything we could to get a broad section of the community in helping to put together these basic facts. When I merged the land use department of the city with the sustainable development department of the city and fused it together on a staff level, they led this effort. And one of the first things that we knew we needed to do was to address the fact that our city was plagued with these inequities based on race, based on where you lived. Portland has some of the best high schools and the worst high schools in the state in the same city. And that if we were going to approach this honestly, we would have to do it with as humble an approach around the issues of inequities as we could possibly muster. And so we really sought to do that. So the framework for everything I'm going to talk about is definitely based on sustainability, it is definitely infused with our efforts to achieve and define what it means to be an equitable city. So the strategy is boiled down to 4 goals. That we want Portlanders to be prosperous, educated, healthy. We want the city to be equitable. Pretty standard set of goals that many cities would embrace. Now when it comes to climate, we define climate as part of what it means to be healthy. So 4 goals. We have 12 measures. Equity and inclusion, resident satisfaction, educated youth, prosperous households, growing businesses, creating jobs, transit and active transportation, reduce carbon emissions, complete neighborhoods, healthy people, safer city, healthy watersheds. These aren't necessarily the 12 measurements, and you can see on the page there's actually numerical goals attached to each one of these in 5-year increments and then 25-year increments. But it is the data that we could get our hands on when we put the plan together. As time goes on, I expect to see these success measures improved and maybe even the composition of them change. This gives you a sense of how the success measures on the right sort of go together with the integrated strategies around equity, prosperity, health, and prosperity and affordability. Give you a sense of the framework. Equity framework was to close the gaps, deliver equitable public services. We mapped where the public services were in the city and the county for the first time, learned where there was significant gaps in needs and close availability of services and sought to address them. And then at the bottom, the plan in terms of action is around 9 action areas: prosperity, human health, design, planning, education, transportation, neighborhood and housing, sustainability and the natural environment, equity and civic engagement, quality of life, arts, culture, and innovation. That's how the strategy's implementation happens in those 9 action areas. Again, on 5-year increments, and then every 5 years, ultimately this is a 25-year plan. Part of the other key highlights of the plan, we recognize, just as I'm sure in this city and cities across this country recognize, that there isn't one city, that cities are a collection of neighborhoods or districts or areas, and that people take great pride in living in one part of the city, or aspire to live in one part of the city. And so we spend time with folks that live and work and own businesses in every part of town, really having a conversation with them about the facts that we had gathered in terms of where they were at in terms of success measures for the people that lived, worked, and owned businesses in that part of town, and the kind of growth that we could expect and how they wanted to work with us to plan for that. Again, not just the physical sort of spatial typology of their neighborhood, but what kind of group of people did they want to be, and how are they going to work with us to deal with the challenges of, let's say, inequity or the local schools not performing the way that we want. If you know me, you know that I care a lot about economic development. I care a lot about job creation. It's sort of the energy and the lifeblood that allows government to do a lot of everything else. If your families don't have the economic security that comes with jobs from successful companies, then you also don't have the tax base to do the kinds of public improvements that need to be done. What I find when I talk to cities across the United States is how little attention, especially strategic planning attention, is paid to the economic development aspect of what it means to be a successful city. There is, I wouldn't say an over-focus on public improvements because that is so important, but I think cities across the world, cities across at least the United States, could take a lot more concerted and proactive action in terms of economic development. In our case, I put together an economic development strategy that was focused on four. We would help any business that existed in the city or wanted to move into the city. But when we were going to be proactive, we focused on four industries that for export, to promote our exports. One was athletic and outdoor. Portland is home to Nike, is home to North American headquarters for Adidas, Columbia Sportswear. So that's one of our targeted industry. The second one is advanced manufacturing, like streetcars. And we have the largest manufacturing plant for Intel chips in Portland. The third is food and beverage. We have 134 breweries in Portland, and food and beverages are a major export. And then the fourth, having directly to do with sustainability, is clean tech and clean tech services. So we really try to use Portland as a flower garden to incubate and raise these companies and then help them export their goods and services all over the United States and all over the world. We also, though, that's sort of the vertical aspect of our strategic plan. The horizontal aspect was to really dig in and look at the economies of the individual neighborhoods within the city. And it was sobering. There were many neighborhoods in relatively affluent Portland that had barely a heartbeat of an economy in that neighborhood. And why is that important? Because different neighborhoods have different typologies. Different kinds of, some neighborhoods are more residential than others, but as I'll talk about in a minute, part of our transportation strategy, part of our efforts to reduce emissions related to transportation had to deal with the fact that 2/3 of trips in Portland had nothing to do with getting to and from work. The 2/3 of trips were people getting what they needed, having to go somewhere else to get what they needed, or wanted at a better price somewhere else in the city. So those parts of the city that lacked grocery stores or the kinds of amenities that people wanted, also again, these sort of layering of issues meant not only were they subject to poverty and subject because they didn't have sort of neighborhood economies, but it also contributed to our problems related to gridlock and related to emissions from the transportation sector. So I mentioned in terms of our efforts to improve the city's prosperity, to grow its wages, focused and created a strategy with focused on trade. We worked on innovation. We put together a seed fund where our companies could apply for small grants, startup companies. We really redoubled our effort with our port to make sure that it's a rail port. We're City of Portland is an inland waterway city, and we looked on a business district by business district basis, and the business districts, the neighborhoods in the city that barely had that heartbeat economically, we focused on the 5 poorest and provided them with the kind of bootstrapping, small strategy making, and grant making to local small businesses to give them a leg up. Not dealing with not even moving beyond the issue of growing jobs and making a stronger Portland, you still have to deal, and you all know this, you still have to deal with the separate but related issue of affordability. One of the problems that we're facing in many American cities right now is gentrification, where the cities have become so expensive that the middle class is forced to move out. Seattle, San Francisco, which are Seattle's here, San Francisco here, Portland's right in the middle on the West Coast. They're dealing with massive gentrification. So is the city of Portland. And I think that you have to be careful what you ask for when you're only looking at land use planning and transportation planning and transit planning, that if that's all you're looking at, if those are the only numbers that you're keeping track of, it can very quickly tip into either a neighborhood or a city can tip into runaway gentrification. So when we're doing our best work in Portland, and we don't do it every day, but when we're doing our best work in Portland, if we're putting in a major, light rail line or something else. Our best work also includes a corridor effort at making sure that we're also putting in affordable housing, or at least we have significant ownership of land along the way so that in the future we can lock in and guarantee affordable housing. Because what I heard from one of the earlier speakers here of a city, I believe in India, is that it's happening in other places, in cities even in this country, where you build the transit system and then you only have the highest priced houses around those transit stops. We face that same problem and sought to address it, and in some ways I feel like we're falling way behind, sought to address it through this strategic plan. Healthy connected city, 20-minute complete neighborhoods connected by a network of city greenways and civic ways. So we have habitat connections. Go back to this. So, 20-minute complete neighborhoods. Now the 20-minute refers to that you should be able to, within 20-minute walk, get what you need on a daily basis. So that complete means that it has the services, the schools, and the amenities that you want. Again, cutting down on the number of trips. We began to keep track of the automobile trip not taken. And it was the most valuable transportation trip. The trip not taken. The automobile trip not taken. And so we were then, having gone through this neighborhood by neighborhood study to determine which were complete, and of those that were incomplete, what did they need? Again, that was our transportation goals, our sustainability goals, our prosperity and affordability goals, that are layered on top of one another. The different connections, habitat connections, greenway connections, the civic corridors. Neighborhood greenways are prioritized for walking and bikes. Civic corridors are prioritized for buses, transit, and also freight. So last couple of slides. So this was approved by City Council. It was approved as a plan. The implementation of it is still happening in a couple of different ways. We created new NGOs or merged existing NGOs to do this work, to keep the partnerships around the table. So for education, we merged a number of education advocacy NGOs, nonprofits, to create All Hands Raised. And you have the city and the county, you've got the police bureau, you've got the transit provider and the port, all sitting around the All Hands Raised is the name of the NGO, working on meeting the goals, working on meeting the goals that have been raised elsewhere in terms of getting the education achievements actually realized. In terms of prosperity and continuing to work on that export strategy, we created a regional, not just the city, but a regional organization called All Hands Raised. In terms of health and sustainability, city government leads the efforts on implementing the Climate Action Plan, and we also created an NGO called Eco Districts to work on that. And in terms of equity, we created a City Bureau of Human Rights and Equity to focus on those equity issues. The five-year action items for the Portland Plan are linked to budgets, and in the past number of years since I've left office, we redid our land use plan. And as opposed to previous land use plans, this land use plan is implementing the strategic plan. And we'll be able to judge for the first time better whether those land use decisions were actually seeing a better achievement of those goals of a city of Portland that's prosperous, healthy, educated, and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. That was a wonderful and insightful presentation. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, so I'll open it now for question and answers. I have several questions myself, but I'll hold on to them for later. So yes, questions from the audience, please.
India is quite different from United States. Here we had a first session on traffic and transportation where traffic congestion, traffic jams are very serious problems along with pollution on the roads. And speakers spoke about those problems haphazardly without any scientific study or statistical verification on the road. So don't you think, Mr. Adams, that we in India should concentrate on important items, not hundreds of small things as speakers spoke today. First, minimize your important problems to be worked on rather than working on hundreds of problems. And on those few, half a dozen problems, use scientific and innovative methods on the field, not on the paper, which were done or which were spoken today in the first session, mostly on paperwork.
Sir, do you have a question? Maybe we can take a few
So I'm coming to that. Be patient, please.
Yes, absolutely. There are a few others.
So, Mr. Adams, what is your observation, expert opinion about the Indian traffic and pollution problems in view of the expertise from Portland?
Well, up until not too many decades ago, Portland had some of the worst air quality in the United States. And taking a strategic approach, where I agree with the aspect of your question, is you definitely have to, there's only so many hours in the day, there's only so much money, people have only so much time. And so focusing, and what we did as a city, facing these violations of air quality in the 70s and 80s, is we had to put together a strategy for reducing that. And I've seen the elements of similar strategies underway in the presentations that I've seen today. So yes, being strategic. What I've learned, and I think there are aspects of it, and obviously the countries and cities are different, but I think there are some universal truths, and that is you want to work, you have to deal, part of your efforts, I believe, all of our efforts have to deal with sort of the immediate problem, especially when it comes to life and safety. But I think we also need to all reserve some of our time to make sure that we're dealing with the strategic issues that are causing those problems. So you got to protect life and safety, no question about it. But a piece of our effort should also be reserved for how do we prevent that from happening now and in the long term, and how do we do it in a way that's sustainable now and in the long term.
Other questions? Madhav.
No, I just wanted to know, you talked about making $3 billion, $11 billion. So just if you can emphasize, because, India has this smart cities program. Again, they've got, most of them have about 20 to 25% of the funding that's come, and the remaining they have to sort of create by aligning. So I think it will be a very useful information.
In the United States, the federal government has not raised the national transportation tax since 1994, and it only recently reauthorized the existing amount of that 1994 collection. So transportation is in rough shape, relatively speaking, in terms of maintenance and expansion and modernization. Everywhere we have our burden in the United States. So at the local level, we have to come up more than ever with our local contribution and a local match. On the ballot right now in Portland is an increase in the gas tax at the city level to help fill that gap. As mayor, I emphasize safety, and because I had to cut back the transportation budget during the recession, and with the money that was left, I emphasized the Vision Zero in terms of reducing the terrible impact of on human injuries, on injuries and deaths. So I really, with the money we had left, emphasized safety, and then emphasized affordable transportation options, a significant expansion of our light rail system in partnership with TriMet and the county and other governmental partners, expansion of the streetcar system, and building out of bikeway infrastructure with a focus on East Portland that lacked just basic safe transportation infrastructure in all aspects, but especially for those that walk and bike. So with the resources we had, that's what we worked on, and we had to come up with more local money because the national government, the federal government, wouldn't raise the tax while the expenses of maintaining the system went up regardless.
Hello, I am Ravinder Singh. I am inventor and technology expert. Sir, how much is the tax collection rate? For example, GDP to tax ratio. What is the GDP to tax ratio? Tax collection rate in your country?
Oh, I'm sorry, for transportation or in general?
For general,
I wish I don't know off the top of my head.
How much is the budget of your state compared to your GDP?
I think, I don't know what it is compared to taxation, but we're a relatively low tax nation, if I recall.
Sir, actually in some European countries, it is up to 50% or something like that.
We're lower than the European countries, for sure.
But in India, it is, in Delhi, it is only 6%.
It's 6?
6% of the GDP.
Yeah.
So we are collecting about 30,000 crores as taxes for about 5 lakh crores of GDP. So this is very low rate, that's why, our public services are not efficient. And, we are not investing adequately in our public services. Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Adams, for making a very interesting presentation. I'm Sonal Jetli from UN Women. So I was intrigued and wanted to ask you, how has Portland mainstreamed gender in urban planning and governance? So, because we know that gender is a very critical component, we know how mobility, usage of space is gendered, everything is so gendered and so different. Women and men experience it so differently. So how and what has worked for Portland in mainstreaming gender really across all sectors in urban planning and governance?
A great question. A couple of examples of how this strategic process helped us get better insight into gender issues. For example, when it comes to wanting to promote more trips by bike, we did extensive survey and focus groups with women, with different age groups, different demographic groups, racial groups. And what we found are clear differences, that a lot of the policies that had been promulgated by the city of Portland had frankly been done by men who were really good at biking, and that was a very different experience and in reality and women's perceptions of safety. And so we changed our approach significantly, and for example, through this work, we learned that we could get a lot more women to take more trips by bike if the bike lane was separated from the traffic. Not just a tiny little thing like this that has a white stripe, but has to be separated. We also found as a win-win that there is a significant amount of other demographic groups that would also come along and get on their bike, but the largest group was women. And so we really focused on wider bike lanes and separated by curb when we had the resources to do that. And what we found is we had more women riders on bikes when we did that, especially in parts of town where the average income was lower, and single women or single women with children. That's an example where looking at it through a gender filter, a gender lens, was incredibly useful. The other is on the economic development side, just understanding more clearly that if we didn't tackle this issue of childcare, that no amount of jobs available were going to get whoever, in our case it's more women than men, or the stay-at-home parent. We were never going to get those single parents out into a job. And so that's an issue that we've yet to adequately tackle, but now we know that that's a major hindrance for women entering the workforce, especially being able to go to school, to get a job and enter the workforce at a higher wage.
Hi, my name is Sonal Dheer and I'm from International Human Rights Organization. We have reinvented the dialogue around human rights and we work on human right to sustainability. So it is also one of the important things that we are looking at, and hence I'm here. My question is that your plan is lovely and it has panned out beautifully as an example. What were the major resistances that you experienced through the whole process? Because if we were to do something like this in Delhi, we can totally imagine the amount of resistances that are going to be there. So something from your example which we could learn straight off. So that's my question. Thank you.
Just like to add one line to that because I had a similar thought. Because when you were explaining how these various agencies got on board, and I mean, of course, I think you did the groundwork by saying, you know, shared understanding of facts. But how did that? Because when you spoke about it, it sounded like everyone seemed to be on the same wavelength, and you know, so please share a little bit more.
No, I simplified it for the sake of time. Our success when we had it through this effort was involving people and asking for volunteers and recruiting a diverse set of people in putting together those case studies from the very beginning. So it wasn't that government put together these draft case studies and then asked people for comment. It was that the experts in government, citizens that we recruited, we sought to have the most diverse group around the table for each of these issue case studies. And that was done in a really participatory way so that there would be buy-in. And if we knew, and we've, major issues of mistrust with government in general in the United States, so true in Portland, we knew that that was key, that was the foundation. Many of the case studies have sort of a minority and majority elements to them as well, where people could not agree. And that's good, that's okay. People aren't going to agree. You can interpret the same set of facts differently, and people can have different suggestions on what to do. Ultimately, the city council made the decision on the direction, but I thought it was very healthy to have that from the very beginning and to allow that disagreement to be part of what moved through the process. But it's never easy. And, this was all sought to inform elected decision makers making the decision. But no, it was, some meetings were very heated, and yeah, no, I don't want to leave you with the impression that there wasn't a lot of healthy debate, and even some unhealthy debate, because there was.
Yes.
Darío Hidalgo from WRI. One of the difficulties government has is that the span of elected officials is really short. And the second is that many things don't get continued because of politics and debate. How does two things were balanced during your term and after it?
The churn of leadership among elected officials is significant. The churn of leadership, let's say at the neighborhood level, in the business community, academia, also maybe not as fast as elected government. The bureaucracy, maybe a little slower churn, but there's this churn. And part of the reason, as imperfect as it is, but part of the reason I wanted us to do this strategic plan is so that future leaders can disagree with it, can change it. But there's this handoff then. There's a better chance of a handoff when there is change. There's like some institutional memory that goes with this normal set of change. And that over a period of 5 or 10 years, the facts, as we've sort of the measures, the 12 measures as we put out there, again, people can change them. But it has to be done in an open process. And it should change and it should evolve. This is not a static plan. But the idea is that there's a handoff between changes, between leaders that change at all levels, private, public, academia, NGOs. There's some footprints for people to look at and some accountability for the collective accountability. When we put together like All Hands Raised, which is the NGO that focuses on making sure that educational improvements happen, it includes all the leaders from all these various stakeholder groups. And those are lots of change as well. So you've got the written measures that can be changed, and then you have these sort of drivers of change groups. Those two things together are intended to provide both flexibility but continuity.
Thank you. Yes.
Hello, my name is Rajit Matthews. I'm from WRI-India. I have a question related to the implementation of sort of the projects that are formulated through this process. Do you follow some sort of like a participatory budgeting sort of method where the people of these local communities can see how much money is being spent, on what it's being spent, some sort of transparency, accountability? Is this taken care of?
Great question. There are a couple of ways we try to seek participation and transparency in the budgeting. One was part of this effort. For the first time, we mapped out where capital expenditures, so money being spent on projects, where that was happening around the city on a geographic basis, which the city had done before. But then we added to that the operational, so the programmatic money, the money for services. And we began to map that out as well. And we through the process, got a better idea of where the unmet needs were in the city. And so we were able to share that analysis with the public as part of the budgeting process and to get their reaction to that. And in some cases, it meant relocating services so that they were closer and more convenient to where the biggest demand for those services were. And then to be able to monitor whether that made a difference in terms of those people's lives. The other is the city has pays to have staff that are hired by neighborhoods to support neighborhood associations throughout the city. So the city spends about $4 million a year that's given to neighborhoods. They can hire their own staff that then help them advocate back to city government on a whole variety of issues. And that's been in place for a number of decades. I think that's critically important to make sure that there's ongoing advocacy that's informed by the staff, helps them, by the staff that they hire, and that there's a level of transparency that's important. I think that, we can always do a better job of being more transparent in the budget. When you have a $3 billion budget, it's a big, thick document. than this. And I think that the city's continuing to work on trying to unpack that in a way that's more useful and more accessible and more readable and more understandable. I don't think we've hit the mark there yet. More work to do in all areas, but especially in that area.
Thank you.
One question.
There's one.
Hi, I'm Nikhil from WRI-India. So my question was, there was a slide full of just departments that you showed, and and the next slide was, of course, the success measures. To actually action, like to put these measures into action, there would be a requirement of there'll be a lot of overlaps between these departments, to mobilize projects and so on. So how do you achieve that?
Two ways. One is the getting the departments that share in the real world responsibility for have different pieces of the same issue, to make sure that in our budgeting process that they have to sit together and jointly budget. Then doing that similar sort of work with the external governments, the 3 billion is ours, the 7 billion or 8 billion is everybody else's. So then repeat that approach with let's say in transportation. You have our, parks, for example, in the city of Portland, is responsible for all the paths and bikeways that are within a city park. Transportation is responsible for the bikeways that are on city streets. The regulatory enforcement department is responsible for sidewalks and pathways that are on private property but have a public easement, making sure that they're working together as part of the budget process, and then having that group of city departments sit down with the state transportation department, the Federal Highway Administration, the streetcar, the transit agency, the Port of Portland, and I'm sure I'm missing the county bridges department, and then having that group sit down and go through their budgets. Not that one agency gets to boss, the city of Portland doesn't get to boss the county bridges department down, but what I found is that they naturally wanted to make sure that it was rational. Because if we have plans for a bikeway that leads up to a county bridge and the county isn't interested in having that bikeway go across the bridge back to city streets, then what have we done? Or worse, we do a project and then another agency that shares the geography of that project rips it up. The public just drives them, as well they should be, into deep, deep anger. So that's the kind of the budgeting and cooperation and the consultation internally, and then all these partners, all the 26 partners, was real key in implementing this aspects of this pretty fast, pretty rapidly, because we have to do a budget every year, at least incrementally.
Hello, sir. Thanks a lot for the presentation. I'm Swati, and I just want to ask that you mentioned that there was you had a lot of stress on innovation while you were planning your cities, and that there was also some seed funding that you probably give out for some business ideas. Yeah. So are there any examples that struck which are flourishing in your city, which you would like to share? Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. There are three kinds of sort of grants that we give out. One was the Portland Seed Fund, which is online, that local entrepreneurs that had ideas could apply to get this seed funding to get their business started, or if they've already started, to grow it. But we intentionally left it so that even if they just had an idea, they could apply. They didn't necessarily have to show that they were already up and running. Yesterday I showed an app on my phone. One of those companies is called Global Sherpa, that allowed people to buy transit tickets on their phone and just show the screen to the streetcar, bus, and light rail drivers that they'd paid for that ticket and it was done on behalf of the local transit agency. And now that company that we gave this grant to is, now in like 30 cities across the United States. So that's an example of sort of on the entrepreneurial side. We also gave grants to neighborhoods for neighborhood-based ideas. And those could be, they were addressing a public safety problem, a connectivity problem, a traffic safety problem. They were going to beautify something that would help make it more attractive for people to shop there. So we also offered those kinds of grants. And then over the years, it was before I was mayor, there's a tradition in the city that we would also offer rewards to people who gave suggestions for improving city services, and those could be to employees or members of the public. Those are three things that are sort of top of my mind.
Thank you very much. One last question.
You spoke about, I'm Radha from WRI as well. You spoke about a really important issue which is very difficult to deal with, which is the runaway gentrification that could easily happen. Could you elaborate, share a little bit more on what are the strategies and mechanisms to build in that affordable housing, and then to see whether that's actually translating, whatever regulations. Yeah. I mean, if you have some, of course, you spoke about that, the government itself has land banks and develops affordable housing, but if there are other mechanisms and regulations that get implemented, and one knows that is actually, exactly, not gentrifying, or it's not just something that exists on paper.
Yeah, it's for a lot of cities in the United States. It's an incredibly difficult issue, and we're facing it in Portland, and Seattle, San Francisco, and even parts of Los Angeles now are facing this sort of runaway gentrification, and it's really awful. I don't have a complete answer to it, but I think some of the critical elements of preventing gentrification is, if you're going to make a major investment in the public realm, it better be part of a bigger strategy of affordability. And usually that means you either have a public-private agreement between a private landowner and the government about they're willing to do something, commit to doing something contractually to keep something affordable. Mayor de Blasio of New York City, just announced a couple weeks ago sort of this approach where he's allowing greater density to be built on certain properties around New York City, but in return for making that land more valuable to property owners, they have to agree to a big chunk of affordable housing. So they get to build 100 more units, higher, taller, bigger projects, but they need to permanently set aside a certain number of those rental units, let's say, at a very affordable price. So you can do that in a number of different ways, is critically important. Tomorrow we're going to talk about transit-oriented development. I'll share with you how we also approach this in another part of the city in greater detail that took elements of what I just described and some more to try to preserve affordability. But once it starts, that market force is so crushing and so great, it is really hard to stop. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. We'll conclude this session now. Thank you very much, Sam, for doing this, and we really enjoyed it. Thank you.
So we'll start in next 2 minutes, and I will request my two fellow panelists, Siddharth and Mr. Vijay Anatkat, to please come up on the dais. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. That section over there and this section over there. Good afternoon. Very good afternoon. That shows that we all had good lunch, yeah. So if you're wondering why we are 3 people on the dais, and the program shows 5, and then if you're trying to probably correlate the name tags and why it is different, the reason is that there is a slightly change in the program. There is an urgent meeting which has come up where the city representatives from the smart cities have gone. But since the topic of the session is moving from ideas to action, we thought of getting 2 very eminent speakers who could really highlight the point of how do we move from ideas to action. So on my right is Siddharth Pandit. He is from National Institute of Urban Affairs. He is the CITCO Smart City Chair in the NIUA. And what he is going to talk about is how do we move from ideas to action, especially around those 20 cities which have been selected. On my left is Vijay Anatkat. He is the advisor to Gujarat Urban Development Mission, a nodal agency which is looking at all the smart cities in Gujarat. And then what he is going to talk about will be more about how do you advance the other 80 cities, especially now that the 20 which have been selected, the 80 which are left out. How do you fast track these 80 cities into the smart cities challenge and way forward? So just to set a kind of background to it, so we all know that when the government, the national government came into power, one of the big urban agenda for this government was to build around 100 smart cities. And what really started as a concept has really now moved forward, especially in last 5 to 6 months. Because for the first time, instead of having the business of allocation to monies to cities, this competition or this program has actually started competition among cities. And in February of this year, we came to know that 20 cities were selected as the lighthouse cities for the smart cities. And therefore, and the balance 80 cities are now participating in the second round of competition, and they will come up for further selections. Now, with this background, I would first like to kind of invite Siddharth, if you can talk about now that these 20 cities have been selected, what next for these cities and where the program moves. You can use the presentation, yeah?
Good evening. Good evening. Good afternoon. Sorry, I apologize on behalf of our director who had to rush to a meeting, as Amit said. We run a small smart city innovation lab that we try to call, try to help the director and work with the ministry to sort of do the program management. And I just want to share some insights that we have had from the proposals that have come through and try to relate how the previous missions have sort of progressed. This is as some people rightly say, this is an urban innovation mission. There is still the Amrut, which is still going to concentrate on 500 cities, giving them the means to upgrade their urban infrastructure. But this is sort of a leaner way of trying to drive innovation amongst the cities. The whole strategic planning that the previous speaker talked about is now sort of mainstreamed in these cities. And we want to I would just want to share some insights that we have learned. So, I mean, most of the people here would probably know about the whole mobility scenario that's happening in India. The vehicles have doubled in only 10 years. They do occupy 80% of the space on the road, but they only serve 29% of the trips. And cities with more than 8 million have a longer trip length as well as higher congestion. But cities with the smaller towns are very much serviceable by bicycles because they have shorter trip lengths as well as buses. One of the interesting things that we find is, and this will come back to later, is in China, the household ownership of bicycles is 8 times that of Indian, but then the cost of owning a bicycle is also 4 times cheaper than having a bicycle in India. So even though census sort of identifies ownership of bicycle as a asset to the household, it's still pretty much a big investment. So when cities start planning their public bike sharing systems, they should try to look at not only looking at putting networks, but also alleviating the burden of owning a bike for the citizens. And then the previous mission, JNURM, most of the expenditures did go through construction of roadways, but it was actually also the first mission in which buses were sort of prioritized in some small limited amount, and some bicycle systems as part of the BRT systems were also being implemented. Very low focus on pedestrianization. So it was very much heavily lopsided towards increasing the road infrastructure. And so looking at the bus systems, there was a big, in terms of public transportation, that was the biggest component. An entire big chunk of money went to procuring the buses for the cities. 9 to 10 cities sort of implemented BRTS, not all of them successful. We ourselves know here what's happening in Delhi, but there are very good success stories as well as some limited stories that, limited cases which sort of did piecemeal approaches to bus transit. While the procurement of fleet was still a success story, there was some big gaps in what happened in operating the buses. There was I think a lack of focus on building the institutions to run these buses, which you would talk about SPVs. There was a lack of robust fare policies and very low adherence to schedule and routes. Some cities did well. They sort of recognized, especially the Karnataka state and Navi Mumbai Municipal Corporation. They built some kind of allied infrastructure that goes into maintaining and operating these buses. And so, even though buses were being bought, the standard that we talk about having a certain amount of buses, operating buses, which are high quality for a population, which Indian cities are still very low in terms of that. Here you could see the differences. I think even only New Delhi sort of comes close to what the buses might be needed to cater to that population. But we should recognize, we did some analysis on the DTC buses. Only 70 to 80% of the buses are being operating at any given point of time. And even though it has a higher staff ratio compared to international standards, it still has more breakdowns and a lower operating ratio. So in that sense, there are cases for bringing up efficiencies through introduction of systems, monitoring of bus fleets. The other barriers, pretty much evident. There was a lack of feeder services, especially bicycle and pedestrianization to connect after when you get off a BRT of the main, as a main commuter mode. When you get off to connect to the last destination, to connect to your destination, there was a complete lack of pedestrianization planning as well as bicycle planning. Even when buses are themselves not the main mode, but they are themselves acting as feeder roads to the modes to the main transit mode, such as a metro or a BRT. Their operations and maintenance were completely declined. So we have examples where circulator buses have been withdrawn, and especially we can talk about, there's a thing that is happening in Ahmedabad where they are contesting whether the AMDA buses should run on the feeder routes. Congestion is a major problem for the buses operating in cities. The average speed is going to is estimated to drop down to 7 or 8 kilometers per hour by 2030. And this whole role of technology, some ICT was being deployed during JNURM, like bus scheduling, as also bus information systems, but this was not real time. So the main focus during JNURM went in expanding the roadway infrastructure. And this allied infrastructure, which looks at operation and maintenance, was sort of at a back seat. Also, there was some limited NMT under JNURM. We have 3 different examples. Nanded have a pedestrianization plan as well as a bicycle plan. They have committed to some money. Bangalore did some pilot projects, but here you can see even on that, I would think that's quite a high volume arterial road, and there's just there's no separation between the bike lane and main carriageway. Pune has a bicycle plan, refreshingly, which it had done in 2012, I think. 2008, but then again it was created in 2012. But nothing has progressed on it. And so when the Smart Cities mission sort of came around, there was a conscious thought through extensive deliberations with stakeholders, with experts, with the citizens about what are the issues that a Smart City mission should address. First of all, it should move away from this project planning, which is traditionally was done in JNURM, to a very strategic planning to sort of integrate all the departments that have a stake, as well as the stakeholders that have a stake in the city in offering services as well as consuming them. Since it is an area-based, since it is an innovation mission, there was a dual focus on area-based approach, which allowed cities, sort of agencies, to quickly experiment with different models within a contiguous, confined area, and then sort of scale it up to the cities. And then there was this whole Pan City initiative, which looked at what are the softer interventions that could sort of reap huge positive externalities to the city. The whole SPV came through because of the need to reform the way projects have been carried out and the way projects have been implemented, monitored, and evaluated. So this is the first time where we are looking at an sort of a planning mechanism to drive innovation. And the mission explicitly talks about convergence from at least 6 different other national missions, and the cities have done, quite well to sort of look and identify resources which they can tap into at the national mission for their smart city plans. There was some focus on sustainability, especially for greenfield developments. There was a 15% emphasis on affordable housing, and 80% of buildings in greenfield developments should be energy efficient. The total outlay for the central government was around $7.5 billion. And so we know we are now at stage 5. The first 20 cities have been identified, and they've been asked to sort of make some improvements in their plan, come back to them. Again, April 15, the next 23 cities of states that have not been were not selected in the first round, as well as some union territories, have been asked to submit their revised plans. This was the criteria. We thought it was useful for people to know how the evaluation happened. The baseline assessment of the cities for themselves was at 30%, and majority went to the area-based development. Also, citizen participation. So it's also unique because Smart City Mission was sort of a mandate for the cities to drive citizen participation. Around 15 to 16% weightage was given to how the cities engaged with the citizens. And so when we come to transportation, and the previous speaker talked about 12 measures of success, I think for them to measure success, the cities had to assess themselves on 24 criteria, 24 to 25 criteria, ranging from energy to housing to open spaces to non-motorized transport, walkable, high density, solid waste management, all these kinds of practices that we talk about and expect cities going forward to implement. And they had to assess themselves on today's, at the current level, and where they want to go at the end of the 5-year plan. So now that we have finished, we have got 20 cities identified. We did some analysis of what the cities are proposing in their plan. I mean, it's quite refreshing that at least for the 20 cities, they have listed around 200 projects that have to do with integrated mobility, which is 25% of their entire budget for the 20 cities is being given for mobility. NMT, bicycle and pedestrian planning, at least it's a good start. Cities have pledged around $400 million. ICT and ITS is sort of the next big at $200 million, $230 million. And this investment average for capita, I think it's a pretty reasonable, when we talk about efficiency, it's a pretty reasonable estimate for a 5-year estimate at $50 per capita. Again, coming back to the bus mobility projects, we looked at 4 different levels of intervention that the cities have proposed. There are around 28 projects at $200 million for actually upgrading their bus systems. Physical infrastructure in terms of bus stops, bus depots, those are next at $133 million. ICT and ITS systems, which are specifically to the bus. So when you're talking about bus prioritization signals, having time of the day dedication, road allocation to buses, those are next. Some cities have proposed hybrid buses for clean fuel. There are cities which have proposed transit-oriented development, but Ahmedabad is the only one which is looked at around a bus corridor. There are more cities which have done TOD kind of proposals. And so this is just some mapping for what the bus projects have, what cities have proposed for the different bus project. In physical infrastructure, you have the bus stop, bus depots, ITS. We have just about discussed this. And then the other component of the last mile connectivity was this whole bicycle planning that cities have proposed. And so if we talk, we consider there are at least 7 essential components of a successful bicycle culture in a city, right from the physical infrastructure to having a successful bike sharing systems, ITS, parking for bicycles, some kind of DCR changes and land use changes to promote bicycling, integration with transit, and then institutional, very importantly, institutional outreach, investing in advocacy groups for bicycling. And so when we mapped out these cities, we look what cities have touched, and I think Chennai is doing pretty well because it has sort of integrated most of the components within a bicycle system. Other cities are also doing pretty well, and so now the cities can start mapping these things for as they go forward when implementing these projects. The graph on the right is the average ownership, which is pretty high for bicycles in most of the cities that are in this first 20 cities. And these are some numbers for bicycle-based planning. The 20 cities have around $25 million they have suggested for bicycle planning. Very tiny amount, but still a good start. But if you look at from an investment average per mile, their averages are pretty much global standards. If you look at a bike planning system, it could range anywhere from $15,000 per mile to $130,000. So we're right at that sweet spot. So we should expect at least some way towards a global bike sharing system. I've put citizen engagement exercises. Cities have done their own citizen engagement exercises, but we at NIUA did 3 engagement exercises, one for the PMO's office, one for Pune City, and one for IIT. And bicycle ownership, bicycle planning, the need for bicycles came on top in top 3 in all those. So there's a huge inbuilt demand for bicycles to fulfill main commuting mode as well as a feeder mode. And so in this whole spirit of CONNECTKaro, where does the National Smart Cities Mission start? We have all seen the graphs on the left where the Indian scenario is parking, congestion management, huge anticipated rates of vehicle ownership, and we sort of think that this kind of mode will sort of start connecting them to sort of the systems that make for sustainability. The JNRM, if we talk about sustainability, you have to have a physical infrastructure in place. You need to have the systems which sort of monitor those physical infrastructure, and then you have policy changes to drive behavior, public change in behavior. And so right now, I think Smart Cities Mission is somewhere in that, looking at systems that can reside on infrastructure and then give data and evidence for making policy changes. So that's where we see the Smart City Mission. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Siddharth. And what was really interesting is that on one side we have these 20 cities selected, but there is also a roadmap for the next 80 cities. And I think you will have a lot of questions around the presentation, which we'll take it after the second presentation. So I request Vijay Anatkat, he would talk from, so what Siddharth talked about was largely from the central perspective, NIUA being the national level agency which is involved in smart cities. Vijay will talk about from the state perspective as someone from GUDM on what the state of Gujarat is trying to do, A, with the 2 cities which has been selected, and B, all the rest of cities which have been allocated, and how the government of Gujarat is moving forward in the smart cities mission.
Thank you, Amit. I'm presenting on behalf of Dr. S. Murali Krishna, who is the mission director at Gujarat for the smart city missions. And basically, it talks about what the Gujarat did. And in the first round, the Gujarat was intended to cover at least the 4 cities, but they reached to the 2, and Ahmedabad and Surat. But if you analyze all these 6 cities of Gujarat, has the distance, there are various differences there, and it provides the path, and which can be considered as the lighthouse to other cities, and each has a different characteristic, and that is why I also have chosen that I will present on the Gujarat case study itself. And so I continue with this presentation because when we heard about his engagement in other part, that time it was decided that let's change the presentation, and we will do about the what we really require to present by the other cities or the 80 other cities which can be compete in the other part of the this is the phase 2 and phase 3 part of the smart city challenge. So I continue with this this presentation, and it's a and in between I will add my own. So as you know, this is the the smart city objective of the mission. Though it's a the everyone knows, but I believe that some people are outsider and may or may not be comment with that what is the definition or objective of the smart city mission by the MOUD and by the the government of India. That is why the smart city uses the smart solution. And what are these smart solutions? They are listed, characterized in the 6 different heads, and within that heads there are sub-head and sub-sectors. This, for example, it starts with the e-governance and citizen services, where this is the 4 additional, the public information, electronic service delivery, citizen engagement, and citizen and cities eyes and ears, and video crime monitoring. This if you look, this is all this first the e-governance and citizen services, and then you will realize that the really required to resolve our the main problem within the city, which may indirectly identify as the traffic with the most priority to resolve the issue. So that is the that if out of this is the 5 subhead, the 4 are directly related to traffic and transportation. Very important thing is the waste and water management. Wastewater management is also important thing, and then the in the morning session also the minister and the MPs was we are discussing about the recycle and reuse of your in the waste, either the solid waste or wastewater, in maybe in the form of the CNG production, or maybe the reuse of your the wastewater, and can be utilized for the other purpose. This is the similar to that. We insist upon the water management, and if you see that today what is the 5 states across the country are facing the acute the water scarcity, and that it's a really time that we have to resolve this problem, and we have to see and stick to that the some kind of advanced technology, whether it's a 24/7 or 135 LPCD or 100 LPCD. We will discuss here itself in this forum, but we have to look into, like say, in the length and breadth, because when it's about the smart city solution, we have to also see that what is the, like say, really requirement from the people, citizen, and energy management, and that is the naturally you require. The government of India insists for the renewable the sources of energy. In the morning also, like the minister was discussing about the how this the ministry can help to us in managing the energy. Urban mobility is the, like say, the very much important, and that is why the separate sectors and identification is given with the three the sub-component with the smart parking, the intelligent traffic management, and multimodal transport. And this is the what we really require. Like when we prepare the some smart city plan with the, like say, citizen consultation, these are the, like say, the crux where we have to put our, like say, requirement, and then we have to identify the smart solution for that. If we, like say, talk about the various 198 the smart cities, and the Gujarat were given the, like, 6 cities, because I am, like say, presenting on behalf of Gujarat and Gujarat case study. So the 6 cities were identified, and these are the 6 cities: Ahmedabad, Surat, Vadodara, Rajkot, Gandhinagar, and Dahod. Surprisingly, that Dahod was chosen as a, like say, the part of the smart city, inspired that, like, the city from the Gujarat. As you know, the state government allocated the numbers, the 5, 6, 10, that these numbers, all the states were given that. Gujarat were given the 6 numbers. So what the Gujarat government did, they identify this is the 31 cities. This is the, like say, the 19 cities from this is the A-class municipality. 1 is the state capital, 7 municipal corporation, and this is the tribal town, Dahod. And then they, like say, run through the various the ranking procedure identify and given by the MOUD, and they identify the 9 cities, and then the, like, last stage they chosen these 6 cities based on the highest score pattern, and were sent to MOUD for the, like, the final selection of that. And MOUD, like, so declare these the 6 cities as the shortlisted cities on the August, and then 2 cities rank in the, like say, the first list when on the 28th, 29th that it was declared in January. There were the 2 cities with the Surat position at the 4th and Ahmedabad with the 6th place. If you want to see this is the all process, we also require to see this is what are the strategies to develop the smart city mission plan. And though I believe that most of you are knowing that the area based approach and the Pan City initiative, but, like say, I just remind you that in the, like say, the area based the development, there are the 3 things: the retrofitting, redevelopment, and greenfield. With the, like say, the pilot the projection, like say, areas is given to each city, that is like maybe the 500 acres. If you want to develop the retrofitting, that, like say, redevelopment is about 50 acres. This is the minimum area is to be chosen while you are, say, planning for this is a smart city plan. And Pan City initiatives, across the cities you choose one sector and you, like say, develop your proposal. So on this background, let's see what the Gujarat did for all the 6 cities. The first, they developed the, like say, city vision based on the, like, citizen engagement, and you must be knowing that, like, a very important concept in the smart city plan preparation is the citizen engagement. And like say, my, like say, friend already presented that 30% is the, like, score given how you are, like say, engaging the citizens. And we will also discuss about how to, like say, engage the citizen more and more, and in what way. So that, like say, the like vision for smart city. This is the, like say, Ahmedabad, and I will discuss only the 2 winning, like say, the smart cities, like say, the Ahmedabad and Surat, efficient and customized governance, and the futuristic global city. These were the vision for the Ahmedabad. Ahmedabad has chosen the retrofitting and redevelopment both. The most of the cities are chosen the like say the retrofitting, but the Ahmedabad is the like say if you see the list of the 20 cities, they have also selected the redevelopment, and this is the like say this give you idea what to select for the remaining the 80 cities, whether it's like say 500 acres or you can also choose the 2000 plus acres. So that is the like say range you can select on that. And very important thing is the only the city has chosen the TOZ as a part of your say retrofitting and redevelopment proposal. That already my friend has described that the Ahmedabad did the TOZ. And very important thing is the like say the Pan City initiatives is a more or less all the cities across the like say country, all these 20 cities has chosen the transport as a like say the main, and that is the integrated transit platform, or say the transport mobility and connectivity as a part of your Pan City initiatives, and that is also by the Ahmedabad. But what is the like say the finance and how you like say manage the finance is very important thing. In the Ahmedabad it was the total 2,492 crore, and this is in for Surat is about also 2,500 crore. So about 1 acre 1 crore, that you can definitely say that in case of retrofitting in redevelopment and where you put the more PPP mode, you like say can reduce your say area drastically. So let's move fastly about the Ahmedabad proposal. This is the 590 acres already I discussed it that this is the TOZ area. That is the one like say the BRTS, and out of 9 the BRTS implemented in the country, the most successful we can say is the Janmarg Ahmedabad, and that is the TOZ they have like say selected. The transit oriented zone, which is like so offering today 2.25 FSI, will be offered. This is the 4 FSI, and the redevelopment one full the slum area will be converted into like say housing colony exact opposite to Gandhi Ashram. So that is the like say the proposal. As a part of that like say the other features are common across the like say the all the smart cities, so I will just go through it fastly. And then this is the like say integration with the BRTS AMTS is also very much component, and already I discussed the finance of part of that. And very important thing, it's also like say take care of OPEX, 5 years operation maintenance plan is also included in your plan. That is the SCP is also prepared that, and PPP is a half of that, 961 crore will come in form of the PPP project. In the Surat, the 7 TP schemes, in Gujarat the TP scheme is a very good tool that can be utilized in that, and they taken that advantage of it. The 7 TP scheme like consists of the 2,168 acres of the land will be developed as a part of that, and these all components are like say and if we see this is the competition between the like say Bhubaneswar and Surat, you will find that a lot of things there are the similarity. It covers more or less everything on that in the Surat, and that is why it took also the 4th position, so compared to even Surat, Ahmedabad. And this is the like say very important thing in Pan City. They are also giving some say integration and kind of utilization of the other scheme, that is the convergence with particularly in the national mission mode for e-governance. That is also a part of that OFC cable laying on that. Very important thing is here we can see this, the what is the way ahead. The round 2 of the city challenge will be open on the 1st, that is already we started. The total 54 the remaining cities. There are the 23 cities already the my like previous speaker spoke about that, the like say 23 fast track, and they have to submit their bid the SCP by 15th April. So remaining the 54 cities will be in the like say competition. So out of 40 cities, the like say the 17 cities will get the advantage. If we believe that all the 23 cities will be selected from the fast track, so the only 17 city out of this remaining will get the advantage. But in terms of percentage, the chances are they about 30%. The earlier there were the chances of the 20%, now there the chances are the 30%. That precisely 29.82. So the 4 cities are already doing that. What are the requirement is the like say if you see the ranking of that like say criteria already the mention about it. So what we really require to do that, we have to focus more on citizen engagement, and we have to precisely choose that what is the area development proposal and what you are going to take, whether retrofitting, redevelopment, how will you choose it, whether like say the greenfield project can be taken or not, and how, what is the like say. So this is the like the status of that. I would like to answer your question instead of talking more in these details. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay bhai. And now we can have some question and answer. And before you gather your thoughts, and since I have the mic, so let me take the advantage of asking the first question. And this one is to Siddharth. So the competition up till now for these 20 cities and other balance 80 cities is around proposal, which means that cities are promising something that they will do. But we all know that if smart cities have to succeed, a lot of will happen, what will happen from now on, which means action on ground. Is there a thinking within MOUD and IUA to also have some kind of competition around implementation of these cities?
That's a loaded question. I don't know if I'm supposed to divulge these details. But there is serious thought given about how we can go about, first is monitoring the implementation, but also sort of steering it in the way in which the original intention of smart cities was. So one thing that has happened is the cities have not been given a carte blanche or a blanche check to get, I mean, it's a competition. And the jury has taken actual painstaking details to give feedback to the remaining, at least for the second round, the fast track round, each of the 23 cities, a detailed feedback on things that they have missed, either in terms of financial planning, which is sort of the biggest obstruction, then in terms of forming a coordination agency and getting all the agencies on board, committing to them, and even to things like land acquisition, if there is a requirement for a land. Also, I mean, there was one city which had said that it would, I mean, without getting into the details, that it would look into ASI structures being part of the smart city plan. And so that kind of minute detail has also gone into giving a feedback. Now, I think the hope is that the cities will sort of take it back and keep improving the plans. I mean, we planners feel important, but I think at some level there is a requirement to address all these concerns before getting into implementation. But yes, the monitoring and evaluation framework and the hand-holding process will continue throughout the implementation.
Sure, thanks a lot. Yeah, the first question over here. We can like 2 or 3 questions together. So yeah, you can have the first question. Second, we can have Ranjit.
Hi, I'm Dharmishta. I come from Mahila Housing Seva Trust. I have actually 2 questions. One was in your presentation on the whole smart city thing, a lot of focus it seems is being given on transportation. So your review of the initial 20 cities, was the focus on transportation only at the pan-city level or within the city limits? Or was there also any focus given in terms of looking at whether there is linkage in the city transport with affordable housing projects, as also with the other nearby regional hubs? Surat, for example, I know that there are a lot of upcoming cities from which will have an implication. So was that focus given? My other question is to Mr. Vijay Ankat, is that, and to you also if you can answer, there's a lot of, it seems there was a lot of focus on citizens engagement. And other than having stakeholder workshops, what was the other modes of citizen engagements which the cities had used?
Sure.
Apart from stakeholder workshops.
Sure.
Thank
you. Ranjit.
So continuing where JNNRM mission left off, we still seem to be in a mission mode in terms of fixing cities. I don't know if this is supposed to fix cities. So, but those who are serious about actually urban reforms might sort of see this quite differently. So let me put it nicely. Can one see the smart cities taking cities towards better urban governance? or will it, because the SPV is sort of one of these things which has been a bit of a sore thumb because it sort of takes you in a direction which could be perceived as being away from what one would want to have in terms of better urban governance. So how does one sort of see smart cities mission in terms of the longer program for urban reforms?
Sure.
So I hope the controversial question was for him, sir. No, I'm kidding. So addressing the first question, the transportation initiatives have both been area-based and pan-city. They have not really, refreshingly, I mean, cities have gone for softer initiatives. So we have had projects proposed which are greenways, which were never proposed before. In an area-based development that is also contiguous with a river. It has been merged with some funding for cleaning of river from the river Swachh Bharat mission. So there has been sort of those initiatives. Housing has been connected in a way where we required some kind of at least the minimum affordable housing in greenfield, and if you are doing redevelopment, then you'll have to rehabilitate all the people that are already in the existing area. There has not been any focus given. I mean, hopefully it will, to any kind of rental housing or having those. So one of the things that I suggested was you also need policy improvements by the city level, at the city level. It's not a central level, it is a state level subject. So having rental housing as part or some kind of inclusionary housing near transit lines, that can, but you need to have the systems in place and the data in place. So smart city mission will sort of just give data, provide data, then to go ahead for the cities to go ahead and make those policy changes.
Yeah, Vijay, right.
Yeah, I'll try to answer all the question with the single answer. So yes, citizen engagement, whether it's only a workshop or no, it's not like that. So in that case, though the Ahmedabad is selected city, and she is from Ahmedabad, so I say the failure of the Ahmedabad citizen engagement. Because they did it the MyGov is the website where you find that what is happening. It is the Twitter, they handle and they update each citizen. There are the what the Ahmedabad claims is the more than 45,000 tweets through that the citizen consultation, and then they got the mobiles phone numbers from their tax department and they pass that message. There are the other modes. They continuously, they're social media. They also allow all this kind of platform where you can give your opinion. It's even all city civic center in the city. They were the form. They distributed about more than 5 lakhs forms where you can really put your priority. You can say that is, even there were the essay competition, there was the tag competition, and then there was the slogan competition. In Ahmedabad, it was the Ahmedabad, my heart. That was the slogan was selected by the city. It's like the Surat, the sustainable Surat or something, that was the selected in that also. So these are the citizen engagement. That is the first what I want to answer. And the second, you have to see that the smart city is the only one platform where this is the all other mission. There are the 6 missions parallelly running through. It's a JNNURM. It was the only single platform where this is all these sectors were selected as a part of your CDP and then development of your detailed project report. Here it's in the different form. There are the Amrut mission where universal coverage of your water, sewerage, and your open space is the aim in that. They want to highlight the parks, or they want to allow that to develop this is the open space or footpath, cycle track in the Amrut mission. This is if you see that. There are the other mission where for Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or your like say there's Hriday in some cases, or maybe like say the Swachh Bharat mission, or like say e-governance. So that all these like say mission you can integrate, and that is why if you see this is the Smart City Mission website, you will find the all this ministry has the one nodal agency and Smart City Mission cell they have established, and they are also like say dealing with this. So only that is the not like say the your one the transport is the only solution they are providing. No, it's like say other than that transport is the part of that and system is there. Third, very like what we saying controversially is about the SPV or not. See, this is if you see the smart city, it like say is only the one pilot project. What we are saying is the area-based development is like ranging from the 50 to 500 acres, where they are developing by like say involving some kind of SPV, the like special purpose vehicle that is incorporated under like say Company Act 2013. They are establishing this company. All these companies are forming to like say execute the programs project under the SCP proposal. In future, like say may or may not continue that company, and that like say will be looked after by the whole. This is the one pilot like say project they are taking of that, and that is why it is SPV. And in that SPV, all these municipal council members are elected people are also part of the director. All the others part of the director. So you don't bother about the SP or not SP. Very important thing is your SP, the smart city proposal must be resolved in proper way. That is
sure. I think the fundamental question which I was trying to say is that this is one project, and because of to get focus on this project, the SPV model has been chosen. Whether this is right or wrong can be debated. But I think the other question, if you want to add something.
Also, I mean, coming back to what Ranjit asked, I mean, there are, it's not going to be a panacea. It is an urban innovation and an urban learning program. Today, I mean, there's a capacity building program for 10,000 planners and engineers that has been planned by the ministry. There's a urban reform program under Amrut, which carries some part for cities to start undertaking But the fact is they need to start first learning about how, I mean, on some level, how to even manage a small area in terms of all the 24 parameters and being financially sustainable in that sense. Then the knowledge diffusion will come into.
Yeah, so I'll ask, first question here, then quickly we'll, please be brief in your question.
Good afternoon, sir. I am GM Ravindra, Deputy Commissioner, City Corporation, Davangere. So under the smart city challenges, we have been speaking of, about affordable housing. So housing is a major challenge. We are focusing on this one. So under housing, if we want to provide the housing for the poor, so the land is the major issue. So nowadays, after the announcement of the smart city, the land cost has boosted up like anything. Almost it has come to triple, 3 times the size. So in this case, so if we are to providing the housing for the poor, so don't you think that the government or MOUD should concentrate on creating a land bank to have certain plans to have the land at some concessional rates? Thank you.
First question, very interesting question though. Yeah, please be quick.
It appears no physical experimentation on the ground was done before selecting 20 smart cities. No physical experimentation on the ground was done to select these 20 cities. These 20 cities were selected on whims by bureaucrats and politicians. It would have been better if they had selected 1 or 2 cities first and then done some physical work on the ground. Physical work on the ground, not the paperwork. And then by learning by mistakes of those two cities, they should have selected more 5, 10 cities, not 20 or 100 cities or 400 cities. So we Indians are famous, world famous, not to do any physical work, but only paperwork. And we have learned that Rajiv Gandhi also did Ganga cleaning, but completely failed, like Uma Bharti.
Sure. Good question. Should we select a couple of these and then move forward? Yeah, we'll take one more question and maybe we'll have someone who has still not asked the question. Please be very quick because we are running out of time.
Hello, thank you. My question relates to residential complexes, building of residential complexes. In India, it takes 7 years, 8 years, 9 years to build a housing complex. So it is very, very inefficient. And a lot of money is already, you can say blocked in our housing projects. So when we are going to build, new 100 smart cities, so there will be a lot of, diversion of resources from existing projects, which are held up to a new area. That's one thing. My second question relates to water requirement. At least 150, you can say, districts in India are, prone to droughts. Even at this time, 150 districts, they have practically no water. This includes Gujarat, this includes Maharashtra, this includes Madhya Pradesh, and so many other areas. So how you are going to, you can say, supply water to these smart cities? This is a very, very big challenge. You should be locating cities, where you have water.
Sure.
You have assured water.
Good question. Anyone else? One final question before we... Okay. So 3 questions if you like to take 1, 2 or all the
Just to the Honorable Municipal Commissioner. I think you're right, land is going to be an issue for some of the cities, but I think cities have also started innovating with, at any given point of time, 20% of the land is underutilized within the city. So there are vacant lands, there are parking lots. I mean, this is where the economic opportunity is. The densities in some of the cities are very low. So the conversation is around FSI. But if you actually not look at FSI, but actually talk about tenements per square kilometer or this number of people per square kilometer, and sort of introduce DCR changes which says 25% will be built at less than 50 square meters or 500 square feet. That reduces your affordability issue. And as sort of people start moving to those houses, then the rental housing stock becomes available for other people to move into that. So it's not going to be an overnight giving ownership pattern to everyone, but land is an issue, and I'm not sure how. I mean, I would not know. And then the second question, sorry.
Yeah, was about should we have selected 1 or 2 cities and then moved?
I'll take this honest feedback back to the. I cannot comment.
Yeah.
On that.
So I will start with the same question. It like say I'll not repeat it, but like say if you see this Gujarat Develop One, see this is the 3 important document. That is the, like say, public-private partnership in housing. That is the, like say, very important thing, because like say the land can be considered as a resource to develop this, and how you can grab that. So I will share that even like say in our website you will find that all the 3 policy, because we from WRI side we have supported the Gujarat, so that is very important document and will be helpful. Answering your question, it's about the 5 city, 100 city, 1 city. It can be debated, because the like say the all city is like say the human face like that. Not a single person have the similar face. Similarly the characteristic of the all the cities have the, like say the different kind of the characteristic and aspect. So if we select the 1 city and if we fail on that, we will believe that all the remaining city we will fail that. Maybe that's why I am not like say the person who can answer this question. That is, we should select the one city or 100 city or 5 city as the pilot project.
Sure.
Yeah. And third is like say you can answer.
No, sorry, just one more thing is I forgot is a lot of cities have also started looking at their own old industrial assets for retrofitting and inclusionary housing. So it's not only they are demolishing it, but they are sort of adapting to the housing demands that are coming up. So I think that is one thing that you should.
Yeah, so I think one of the, maybe on the lighter note, we can have one more innovation at smart cities. As you said, as the time your city was announced as smart cities, the prices went some 3 times. Maybe we can say that they have not been selected. The prices will go down and then you can buy the land and then we can announce again. So on this lighter note, thank you all for participation. Thank you all to my fellow panelists. Lovely discussion. I invite you for tea in next 15 minutes. We'll come back again for the concluding sessions.